Right, okay, so the time is 2 minutes to 1 in the morning, and today is the 25th, Sunday, the 25th of August, 2024, and I am setting up a Facebook group. Um, and I figured I'd kickstart this off with, a little video, just sharing my journey, what I've been through to get to this point. And why I'm doing what I'm doing. Um, and it's something that's been on my mind for some time to do. It's been something I've been wanting to do. And I think at this point, particularly today, it's necessary. I want to achieve a few things. Number one, I want to seek out like-minded individuals. I want to seek out people that are going through the same struggles, people that understand the struggle, but also people that are looking for that community to be able to overcome. And one of the things that I found whilst going through what I've been going through is here in the UK, it's a little bit different to what I'm seeing in other nations, where when it comes to this topic or this issue of diabetes, everybody seems to sort of say, look, this is something that's progressive. The inevitable is, it's all downhill from here. There's no coming back. There's no overcoming. And I've been at this now, so I found out, January this year. And we're now 8 months into it. Currently at the moment, I don't know, whether or not I'm still medically still considered to be diabetic, because of my last test I had was maybe about a few weeks ago, and I won't have another one for because they do them every 3 months, so I won't have another one for a while now. And my last MMOL reading was 50. In January when I found out, December I was sick, and then I got tested in January. My MMOL reading was 121. So it's been a little bit of a journey getting to this point. But one of the things I discovered along the way is it's tough. I feel like I've been on my own. I feel like I've done all this stuff, and there's no support network, or at least I've not been able to find one. And I will go online now and sort of see if I can look for one. But I've just created a group. It's called Reversing Diabetes UK group, to find individuals that are like-minded, to build that community. Because if that community doesn't exist, if you go over to, like, in the States and stuff, I was speaking to some people from an organization called Mastering Diabetes. And one of the things I appreciated about the conversation I had, this was July time. One of the things I said to the lady was, you have no idea how good it feels to finally speak to another human being who who's on the same page, who actually says and believes the same things that you do, that this can be reversed, that you can overcome it. Up until that point, to hear another human being's voice, like, live, we were on I think it was a Zoom call, but to hear another human being in conversation actually say, look, this is completely reversible, you can overcome this, yada yada yada. It was like, wow. you know there's a difference between watching somebody say something or reading something about it on the internet, like, oh yeah, it can be reversed, da, 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 and then having that overwhelming barrage of opposition from uh, the medical personnel here in the UK. I tell you the opposite. It's tough, because you don't have an actual human being on your side, telling you, yeah, this can be done, you know. And to actually hear someone face to face say that 6 months in, it was a completely different experience. And one of the things I said to this lady was, um, I'm just happy that there's a community out there that can actually you can ask people who you can talk to who are either going through the same thing, have been through the same thing, um, or are coaching you to get out of this situation. I didn't end up going with the program. I was looking for more of a one-to-one situation because my circumstances at the time were such that um, July time I'd managed to bring this thing down quite significantly. And, as far as I was concerned, I was on the verge of, getting my sugar levels under control. This was and then in May, around about the 9th or the 10th of May, I lost my legs. When I still have my legs, I mean in the sense of I slowly lost my ability to walk because of how much pain I was feeling in my feet. And day by day, literally day by day, my mobility dwindled. It got to the point where, just to walk, 4 or 5 meters would take me a good minute or so, just to get a few meters ahead. Because any movement I did in my feet, whether it was, this way, it was that way, any form of movement was excruciatingly painful. And, I kept going back to my GP, and my GP would we had the GP I was at. I've moved house since. The GP I was at, they had they were like, "Oh, you're really lucky because we have two resident diabetes nurses, and that's not something you'll get everywhere you go." So I was like, "Oh, brilliant! This feels like there's going to be some support here." But they refused to look at my feet. They'd say to me like they'd only do telephone conversations with me um, at that particular time in May, and they'd say to me, "Oh yeah, it sounds like you've got something called diabetic neuropathy." My feet were painful; they were very painful, and they said, "Oh, we won't look at you, but if you book an appointment to see the doctor, we'll leave some notes and da da da. You can see the GP." They call them general practitioners here, and I said doctor. So if you hear me say doctor, I mean GP. So the very next morning, I went to see the GP. Bear in mind that that Sunday of that weekend, I'd called the out of hours uh, sort of doctors. You can ring a line called 111, I believe the numbers, and then they put you through to like a telephone version of a doctor, and they assess you, and then they'll give you instructions. So when I rang them, they told me, "Yeah, you need to go to the hospital." So I went to the hospital. They did their checks, and eventually they sent me through to an in-house GP at the time who said, "Yeah, it definitely sounds like you've got something called diabetic neuropathy." So this is in May. And at this point, I'd brought my MMOL down from 121 to 67. So I'm making progress. I was playing football a couple of times a week, but mostly once a week. And I was going to the gym in very baggy clothes. Like back in the day, you'd go to the gym in sweatpants and all this baggy stuff. Nowadays, you go to the gym, everyone's in all this tight, short and stuff. Now I went in all this baggy stuff, and I'd walk on the treadmill on an incline. So I'd start, quite low, and then my body would warm up, and then I'd push it up to from 2 to 5. Then I'd go to 7. Then I'd go to 9. Then I'd go to 11. And when the burn came on, I'd drop to 9. And if it burned too much, I'd drop back to 7. And then I'd go back to 9. And it was brilliant. Every time I left the gym with so much. I had that would be the point of time in my week where I had the most energy. At the point where I was leaving the gym, it would be where I was the most energetic, where my body felt the most alive. And then obviously the next day I'd be on recovery, so I wouldn't go. I'd go every other day. And then by the time I got to day 2, I'll be back to feeling really so. And then I'd go to the gym and it's like, oh yeah, I feel alive again. I feel energy. So I was going every other day. So, I was hammering at this thing, big time. And, the doctors were shocked, like, how on earth have you managed to bring it down from 121 to 67 in 3 months, you know? Um, Obviously I'd cut out, processed food and all that stuff. And yeah, then May comes and, my legs start to feel painful. I get all these sharp pains in my feet and in my fingertips. And they're just like, oh, there's nothing we can do about the neuropathy. So they sent me. I went to the hospital. Then I rang and I said I need to speak to the diabetic nurse. They then said nope, see the GP. And I was like, well, the hospital specifically said no GP is going to be able to help me. I really need to speak to someone who specializes in diabetes. And thankfully, lo and behold, we've got two diabetic nurses at my GP practice. So that's you. And yeah, where do we go from here? And as a kid, somebody examined my feet just to, first of all, diagnose it, confirm what it is, and then, we take it from there. Um, and they're like, no. So I went to go see the GP the very next morning. GP doesn't even spend 30 seconds. I was in slippers and socks, quickly, so we can quickly take them off and they can check and do the diagnosis. And she's like, no, you need to go back to the hospital. I was like, I was just there on Sunday. This is Tuesday now. I was just there on Sunday and they said they can't do anything and you want to send me straight back to the same place. Like, oh no, you went to the wrong area in the hospital. So then she picks up the phone and she does this open call where I could hear everything. Obviously, it was speakerphone. And she's like, oh, he needs to come back, da da da. And the doctors on the other end initially were kind of like, wait, we don't understand where this is coming from. Like, can you give us a bit more information? And she's like, oh, and then she starts blending all the information over the course of the last sort of month and saying this has happened, this has happened. And I was like, well, yeah, it has, but that kind of happened 3 weeks ago, and this happened now. And she's like, no, let me talk to them. I'm like, all right, okay, do your thing. They talk and she starts using all this jargon which I don't understand. Anyway, the doctors on the other end were like, all right, fine, send them across. Imagine I'm supposed to be working, so I end up going over to the hospital, spent nearly all the day. So the call was done about 8:30 in the morning. I think I left the hospital about, it was either 2:30 or 4:30, but I think it was 2:30 in the afternoon. They couldn't do anything. They just sort of said to me exactly what they'd said on the Sunday. You just need to see a diabetic nurse, diabetic specialist, and I was like, well, we've got two nurses in my practice, and like, I'll go back and see them. So that was a waste of a day. No further forward. And went back and I called. I said, look, the doctor at the hospital, seeing that I'd been messed around quite a bit, actually wrote a letter, and she gave me a copy of that letter. She said, look, I've written them a letter. Here's the copy of everything I've written. Here's my name. Here's everything. Da da da. So I go back now armed with confidence, saying, look, see, this is what's been done. Can you see the letter? And the diabetic nurse still refuses to see me, still refuses to examine my feet. I'm like, you're the only one who can do this. None of these people are trained in this, and you. And she says, oh no, book an appointment to see the general nurse. And then if the general nurse thinks it should be escalated to the GP, it'll be escalated to the GP, and then we'll take it from there. I'm scratching my head. I'm like, this doesn't make any sense whatsoever. I've just seen the GP who's told me to go to the hospital, told me to go back to the GP, come back and speak to you. And so it was a really, this is all in like 1 week. So I book another appointment and this nurse examines me and she says, look, I can check your feet. Yeah, but I can't really tell you much. I'm not an expert on diabetes. Um, so you're gonna need to book another appointment to see the actual GP. And yes, I said to her, look, understand where I'm coming from. Sunday I was at the hospital. Monday I rang, spoke to the diabetic nurse. She told me come early in the morning for the earliest appointment. So 8:15, 8:10 I was waiting outside the doors for you guys to open. I see the GP. The GP doesn't even look at my feet, sends me back to the hospital. The hospital says I should come back to the diabetic nurse. Diabetic nurse tells me to book an appointment with you. You tell me there's nothing you can do. You're all part of the same practitioner's office or whatever, because it's the same GP. And now you're telling me to book an appointment with the GP again, and there's nothing you could do. So I could have told you guys this. In fact, I did tell the diabetic nurse this on Monday when I had my conversation. So I ring back, and at this point I'm frustrated. So I end up saying, right, okay, I'm going to contact an organization based in the States called Mastering Diabetes, and that's why I ended up going down the path of, in the hopes that I could just get a one-on-one consultation. I know they won't be able to examine my feet, but at least they'll be able to tell me, what I needed to do in order to get from where I was, so that I can get back into the gym and I can get back myself to bringing my sugar levels to within control. From 121 um, all the way down to 67, and then these issues happen. As part of that whole shebang, I requested that they do another test just to see whether what it was causing the issue. Blah blah blah. Anyway, long story short, um, they do another test and they said, oh, it's come down from 67 to 54. So I'm like, okay, so it's not the fact that I'm doing something wrong and my sugar levels have gone back up. What could the issue be? Out of frustration, I turned to the internet, something I was trying to avoid doing by all means, because when you try Google symptoms, you'll leave the internet very depressed. But I turned to the internet and I typed in something simple. I typed in, because they put me on something called metformin, and I typed in metformin and muscle weakness or something like that, because I noticed that around May time, my muscles all over my body were just gone. They were soft as cotton. And the first hit was a forum where everybody was saying the same thing: diagnosed with diabetes, started taking metformin, and roughly 3 4 months down the line, boom, the same issues happened. It was like clockwork, one after the other. And every single story I read, it's as if they were in my life watching me and just documenting exactly how things went for me. And it's just post after post. Yes, this exact same thing happened to me. Yes, this exact same thing happened. Yes, this is one after the other. And I went through quite a few of these reading them. I'm like, wait, so if this is something, and the same thing happened where they went to their GPs and their GP was like, oh, well, we don't know what the issue is. And I was like, well, hang on a second. If this has been documented so many times, surely someone would have figured out that, this metformin is causing, muscle issues and people are losing their muscle capacity. And that's what's causing the issue. But yeah, no, my GP's like, oh, we have no idea what's causing that. We couldn't possibly tell you. And I was like, that doesn't make sense. So, long story short, it turns out because I wasn't, well, the metformin, I was on such a high dosage for what I was doing, in terms of my ability to eat correctly, lifestyle changes, diet changes, that I was on too much of a high dose, so it caused all my muscles to go flabby. And because of the amount of working out I was doing, going to the gym every other day, playing football on Thursday, da da da, that's what caused the damage, because my feet were no longer, didn't have the muscle support, so I was pretty much doing all of that on my joints and my bones with no muscles, and that's what messed up my feet. And it took me making a phone call to a private organization called AXA here in the UK. People in the States will probably be like, oh, private care? Because you guys in the States, they pay for everything, whereas here in the UK, the NHS is free. Well, we pay for it in our taxes, but NHS, you don't pay to see a GP. So I called AXA. I filled out this questionnaire, and then make sure my screen doesn't disappear. So I filled out this questionnaire, and then they booked a call with me on their version of Zoom. And within 2.5 minutes of a call and a questionnaire, they diagnosed me with plantar fasciitis, and they said all you needed all this time was to go to a physio. So I'm like, wait, it took you guys one questionnaire which had like 5 or 6 questions in 2.5 minutes to figure out what was wrong with me. My GP, the nurses, the amount of times I went in to have my feet physically examined, they had my feet in their hands. Went to the hospital, da 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 da. None of these people were able to figure out that it was plantar fasciitis. That didn't make any sense to me. So the next day, I'm trying to sort of get my thing processed through AXA, so I can pay them, whatever money they need. And like, oh, you need to wait for an email which will have this and da da da. And I get a random call out of the blue from a Leeds number. I'm like, who's this calling me? I'm not expecting any call. And lo and behold, it's my GP. So either AXA contacted them or but they found out that the previous day I'd had a conversation with AXA and I'd been diagnosed with plantar fasciitis. I didn't call my GP for that. And like, oh, can you come in? We'd like to see you. I said to them, well, at this point, it's no real point because I'm moving house. I'm moving to another part of Leeds, which means you can't be my GP anymore. I have to register with somebody else. I'm out of your, what they call the catchment area. I moved to the other side of the city. And they said, oh no, can you come in and see us? So I'm like, this is very strange. I said, okay, fine. When do you want me to come in? And the day they told me to come in was the day before I handed in my keys to my landlord. So technically, my address was still there, and technically, I'm still within their catchment, and I haven't registered with a new GP. So everything is still above board. So I went in, and they start to give me this whole spiel of, you can book in for physio here. I'm like, well, how would I have known I needed to book in for physio unless I was diagnosed with something? And while you guys physically had my feet there, nobody diagnosed me with anything. You just said you thought, even over the phone, just like, oh, it sounds like you've got diabetic neuropathy, but you didn't actually diagnose me with anything. You didn't do any tests. Da da da. I ring AXA, they do it within a matter of minutes. And, I'm now sort of trying to say, oh, you can book in here. It's like, well, I never would have known I needed to book in for physio because I didn't know what was wrong with me because you didn't tell me. All you did is you made me run around the houses for a week and a half until I got fed up and I decided to ring this private organization who figured it out in minutes. So like, oh, okay. So yeah, so well, you're moving, right? And I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna be with a different GP. They're like, oh, right, okay, fine. And that was it. And I was like, this was not really of much help or of much benefit to me. So anyway, I moved and I'm now with a different GP, and this GP, these guys are brilliant. I'd lost hope in anything to do with GPs and whatever here in the UK, but this new GP, they reminded me what it really is, the care, the level of care and da 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 da. I was like, this is what it should be like. The other GPs, they made me jump through hoops. It was difficult. So now that you have a little bit of the backstory, you'll understand why I'm thinking of, well, I say I'm thinking of why I've created this group, why I'm doing this video, is to say, look, there'll be people out there who are going through similar things, but we don't have that sort of, or at least I've not seen here in the UK, that support network. I come from a family that the vast majority of them are in medical kind of work. Most people who came over to the UK came to do that. I don't do anything medical. I don't work in sort of the medical field. But if you're an African in the UK, then it's likely that the people around you or you yourself are actually working in the medical field. And I've not found anyone, barring one GP at the new GP I'm at, who actually said the words, "Oh, this is completely reversible. You can actually do it." I was like, "Wait, what?" Out of the whole of the, you're the first person in this whole NHS. I mean, to be fair, the first GP I spoke to when they found out my sugar levels in January, I was in that office for, felt like forever. It might have been 20, 25 minutes, I don't know. And she was just walking me through it. There was a ton of information given to me over that period of time, but she was just walking me through this. And okay, we need to do this test. Go pee in this jar. Go do this. Da da da. And once, just once, very briefly, she mentioned, "Oh, there is a possibility to reverse diabetes, just in general. Not you can reverse it." She was saying a possible, and I lit up at that point. And she saw that, and she's like, "Ah, but don't get don't get your hopes. I'm not saying you are going to reverse it. Your figures are quite high, and we don't know whether we should treat you or whether we should send you to the hospital." I really wish they'd sent me to the hospital at that time, because the level of struggle I went through, just from a mental perspective, was difficult. I'm coming in there. I'm like, look, I'm gonna try and reverse this, and they're like, "Oh, calm down, Mister." I don't know whether I should say my name. Let's calm down. Let's not get ahead of ourselves. Take the medication. You need to do this. You need to do that. So I was, yeah, it was a roller coaster of a ride, and I think it's necessary that I start some sort of support group. I don't know how many people will join, and it doesn't matter, even if it ends up being one other person or two other people. That's fine. I'm just looking for some like-minded individuals to be able to support each other from a mental perspective, because that's the bit that's been difficult when you have all these professionals in your ear, dragging you the other way to say, and you're really trying to head in the direction of overcoming it. I mean, the when I went on YouTube and I just watched videos of people saying, "Yeah, we reversed it. It took a few weeks, it took a few months, it took a few this," and I'm like, "Wait, hang on a second. Where are all these people? Why are some organizations claiming they help thousands of people every year reverse it? Like, why is the UK so difficult? Like, why is it so hard?" Everyone you speak to, that you tell them you're on a bid to reverse diabetes, you might as well have said, I'm trying to go and commit a mass shooting, and can you help me? Like, they look at you like you're crazy, like you're mad. And my journey's not been easy. I'm not going to lie to you. I'm going to post some more videos detailing some of the stuff I've been through. It's been actually a very tough journey. And yeah, it's been difficult. I'm not going to lie. But having that support from another human being, I think, would have been crucial through all of this. And whilst I didn't end up doing the mastering diabetes course, because it lasted 3 months, and I thought, no, I don't really want to be tied down to a course for 3 months, and it costs a fortune. Well, I say a fortune. I think it would have costed about £1,000 for the 3 month period. And they had another period which was, I think it was more 6 months or 9 months, and then that one costed three thousand. I didn't convert that one into pounds, but it was 3,500 US, I think. And I didn't end up doing any of these. I just thought, you know what, I'm just gonna try work with the information I have and see if we can get there. So yeah, let's see what we can do. If this ends up being great and people can get support, this will be for free. Nobody has to pay for anything. We just get on there, we share our story.